SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Discover the Copiah Advantage. Copiah County is a Mid-South gem with a spirit of opportunity, a business-friendly environment, and access to major transportation networks. Copiah County, let's do business. Visit CopiahWorks.com today and discover the Copiah Advantage.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, on location at Camp Shelby, the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. Will East in for the vacationing rhinos, safe and sound, at SuperTalk headquarters. We'll be guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music, as Rhino would say. Friday, y'all. What's going on there, Will?
Oh, just another very warm day today. Humid, hot. I mean, summer, I don't know if it's officially started, but it feels like it is arrived.
Didn't take long. It seems like it's always that way. We don't get much spring. We sort of go from rain, monsoon, cold, straight into summer. But we are here at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. Folks, always got to give props to this facility. It is fantastic. It is world-class. It celebrates, respects, recognizes Mississippians specifically who served this nation in uniform. We've got a great show lined up for you today. Coming up in the next segment, Dr. Andrew Wiest, a University of Southern Mississippi history professor, guest speaker for the Memorial Day ceremony, which is just getting underway here at the Armed Forces Museum. He's going to talk about a book that just came out entitled Dogwood, A National Guard Unit's War in Iraq. So looking forward to that conversation. We'll kick off hour two with Major General Bobby Ginn, the Adjutant General of the great state of Mississippi. We'll have Major General Leon Collins, he's the former Adjutant General of Mississippi, joins MidDays at 11:20. And then, of course, we'll have a couple of conversations with Tommy Lofton. He's the director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum, also a Gold Star, and we'll also have a Gold Star family member as well joining us. Always look forward to those conversations. Big celebration here getting underway right now, Will. For Memorial Day, as is customary here at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. This is the time, of course, Memorial Day, when we specifically recognize those who made the ultimate sacrifice for this nation in their uniform. That is what Memorial Day is all about, coming up this Monday. So a long weekend, folks out on the road. So I got to update you, Will. I've been gone the last couple of days. Appreciate Scott Sands filling in for me. I had the privilege of addressing at lunch on Wednesday the Harrison County Republican Club. What a great club they have down there. Huge attendance. I was blown away. They meet at the Great Southern Club. That's on the top of the Hancock Whitney building in downtown Gulfport. Fabulous view up there of the phenomenal Mississippi Gulf Coast. Great food, just a lot of fun. Enjoyed being with all the good people there. You know, Will, municipal elections coming up. In fact, in-person absentee voting for municipal elections gets kicked off this weekend. Check SuperTalk.fm website. multimedia journalist Ben Milam has a great article telling you all about what you need to know with respect to the general municipal elections being held across the great state of Mississippi on June the 3rd. Now, Will, it's always a problem getting the old turnout, the old get out the vote. First, it's a municipal election, and it's difficult to get people motivated for that, though they should be. And secondly, it's June 3rd. And, of course, people are getting on the road, taking vacations and so forth. Please, folks, get out and vote absentee if you need to. If you're going to be out of town on June the 3rd, you can get that started starting tomorrow. And the municipal clerk's offices will be open each of the next 2 Saturdays, the 24th and the 31st, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. So if for some reason you're not going to be in town on June the 3rd, go to your municipal county clerk's office, actually the municipal clerk's office, and go ahead and cast your ballot. And, of course, 8 to 5 on weekdays, registered voters can still cast in-person absentee ballots. Final day you'll be able to do that is on May 31st. So get out there and vote. Municipal elections, the one in Gulfport, particularly contentious. I've spent the last 2 days with Republican candidate Hugh Keating, who I think would be a fantastic mayor for the great city of Gulfport. But it's a tough race. Gulfport's a very interesting city with respect to the way folks vote, Democrat versus Republican. It's like split right down the middle, kind of the way it is on the national scale. And then it comes down to who captures the most of that squishy middle independent vote. So that's kind of the way it's shaking out right now.
So Billy Hughes retiring, right?
That's right, yep.
And it's been a Republican stronghold for a while, but the Republicans are nervous about this one.
They are, and money is being poured in, out-of-state money, of course, into the election to support the Democratic candidate. They smell blood in the water. They really do. And Gulfport's just a tough one to call. It's sort of weird. Speaking of Gulfport, what a blast I had last night performing at the Centennial Plaza in Gulfport. Mayor Billy Hughes organizes this event, musical event, if you will, there at Centennial Plaza. I think this is the 4th year, if I'm not mistaken, they've done this. And this benefits, all proceeds benefit the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, SuperTalk Mississippi, with a great presence on the Gulf Coast. Also one of the sponsors, as well as along with a number of other great coast companies, as you can imagine. But what a blast it was. I had 3 songs playing on the drums there. Played 2 with Pascagoula Mayor Jay Willis on vocals, and then 1 with Transportation Commissioner Charles Busby on vocals. Look, these guys were great. And
what songs did you play?
Well, I had Ain't Too Proud to Beg by the Temptations.
All right,
Mayor Jay Willis
one.
played that. And then Stand By Me, Benny King's version of Stand By Me, also Mayor Jay Willis on vocals. And then some legitimate musicians, by the way, on the stage with us that played the other instruments. They were all fantastic. We had practice Wednesday night. And I got to tell you, I was a little nervous. I didn't feel like that I did too well, or we did too well overall. But man, I don't know. It just all came together and we gelled last night. But numerous other bands performed as well. Supervisor Nathan Barrett also on the drums. He played 5 songs, I think. Ricky Matthews of the Ricky Matthews Show on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, SuperTalk Mississippi. He too a drummer. He had a couple songs, along with at the same time with Mayor of Biloxi, Fofo Gillage, on the vocals and keyboard. He had a Louie. And that's an easy one to sing because you just make the words up.
Yeah, nobody
right?
knows what the words are. So was this the first time? Is this the first time you've performed in front of people in
40 years?
40 years.
Just 40 years. But, it all came together. And then I also had Keep On Smiling. Originally, Supervisor Barrett was assigned that one, and that was with, again, Transportation Commissioner Charles Busby on the vocals, who did an excellent job, by the way, on that. But Supervisor Barrett wasn't familiar with the song, and in fairness to him, he had like 6 total or 7 total. I only had 2, so he said, "Why don't you play this one?" I happened to know that one, and it worked out. But we had Billy Hughes, Mayor Billy Hughes, on the harmonica. There's a harmonica piece in there. You know, he was incredibly talented, and I was a little nervous about it because I hadn't played that song in years. But it kind of came back to me, and it was fun. And but Mayor Billy Hughes came over and gave me a big high five afterwards. So I didn't embarrass anybody in that respect. Big attendance, beautiful setting, great weather, raised a bunch of money. Man, congratulations to Mayor Billy Hughes and Mayor Fofo Gillich as well. Pascagoula Mayor Jay Willis, of course, on stage with me on the vocals. There you go. Ain't too proud to beg. We had a big time. Man, it was a lot of fun. A lot of good folks. Great event. Folks, we're stepping aside for a break right now. We're coming right back with Dr. Andrew Wiest. We're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum, Memorial Day coming up on Monday. Stay with us.
Up next.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Check it out. Let's do this. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. Happy Memorial Day, everyone. We're at Camp Shelby, right in the heart of Camp Shelby. This is a fantastic facility. You got to come tour it, guys. You really do. Honestly, you owe it to these American Mississippi heroes specifically that serve their country in uniform. And there are some great stories that are curated here in the museum. It's just so well done. Get on down here and take a look. You won't be disappointed, I can assure you. So, man, last night, what a blast that was. What a blast that was. Playing drums up there. I was nervous at first. But, you know, good musicians cover up bad drummers. Will. So we had good musicians, and really everybody did fantastic. And we've got a little text group. There's been a bunch of texts going around this morning where everybody is complimenting the event and each other. It's just so fun to be part of that. And I am grateful to Mayor Billy Hughes and Mayor Fofo Gillich for including me in the event. And what a great way to raise money for a worthy cause is to have all these very talented musicians play music. And, man, it was packed, too, by the way. And people were enjoying it. And, of course, lots of the local corporations and businesses buy tables. You know how it works. And T-shirts for the event as well, that all the funds go. Plenty of great food. All the funds go to benefit the Gulf Coast Community Foundation. And so hats off. It's a bunch of work. You know that, putting something like that together, especially trying to wrangle all these musicians and those of us who try to think we're musicians. But I had a blast. I really did. I'm just still kind of on cloud nine about it, being up there on stage with these very talented artists that are good at their craft. And when they're looking at you and smiling, that means they like what you're doing, and that's just so rewarding, so gratifying. A lot of fun. We're still looking for Dr. Wiest. We're hoping to have him on the program. We've got open segments, so we should be in good shape. My guess is he might be involved in the ceremonies currently going on right now. And, I'm getting the head shaking from our Super Talk folks here. So we'll get him on. No big deal. Before we get into the one big beautiful bill, Will, because there's a whole bunch to talk about there, wanted to pass this on. The Treasury Department will be discontinuing production of the penny. So they're losing money.
Yeah, they did like 3 or 4 cents per penny.
Yeah, per penny. So the U.S. Mint reported losing $85.3 million on the nearly 3.2 billion pennies it produced in the 2024 fiscal year, which ended September 30th. What the heck did they produce 3.2 billion pennies for? Does anybody use pennies? I mean, seriously. So you know what's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. The nickel is going to be discontinued, guarantee you. I think it's like break even on the dime. The nickel doesn't lose quite the same amount of money because its value's more than the penny. But I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a move to eliminate the nickel. Yeah, 3.7 cents in fiscal year 24, that according to the U.S. Mint's annual report. Man, that's incredible.
So let me ask you this. If you see a penny, and not just you, Gerard, but everybody, if you see a penny on the ground as you're walking, do you pick it up?
No, I don't.
I mean, that's the value of it now, I guess.
I think that's right. I mean, seems like most of the time, you know, if you're paying with cash when you make a purchase and there's a penny involved and you don't have one, you know how that goes. I mean, The merchant just says, okay, blow it off. Or we had a period where they have a little cup or a little,
give a penny, take a penny.
Hey, you need a penny? Right, exactly. And I don't even see those anymore, honestly. So I think that it just seems like it doesn't have much functionality. I was almost going to say value, but I guess functionality is a function of value. Yeah, it seems like that's been diminished quite a bit. So I think it's a good move, honestly, to discontinue that. Now, the markets are down rather sharply this morning because the president came out. He's not happy about Apple, who said, yeah, we're going to move production from China to more friendly India. And the president says, no, I'm putting tariffs on you. You're going to make your products in the U.S. of A. And the market sold off, and they're still selling off as a result of that. Also, he's getting frustrated with the EU, who doesn't seem to want to play ball on tariffs, and he announced a 50% tariff on imports from the EU being imposed, and the markets don't like that uncertainty, and Apple, of course, sold off. I'm really surprised it didn't sell off even more than it has. Last I checked, it was down 6-7%, and I'm really surprised it's not down more like 15%. I'm a little shocked at that. So, but I don't know what this means as far as Apple's concerned. My fear is that, okay, Apple says, all right, well, since you're going to put such high tariffs on us if we produce these products, iPhones, for example, in India, we can move them back to the U.S., but it's going to be a wash. We can either pay tariffs, because Apple would pay the tariff. They are the importer. They pay the tariff. Not India. We can either pay the tariff or we can produce it here at a much higher cost, which is a wash. So my fear is that if something doesn't break, we're looking at $3,000-$4,000 iPhones. And that would be really detrimental to the company, and I think consumers as well. You'd see consumers holding on to their old phones for a long period of time before they decide they'll dive into that. Now, hopefully that's not the end result. But certainly if things stand the way they are right now with steep tariffs on iPhones produced in India or them reshoring manufacturing, until such time as they can stand up factories that are highly automated and don't require lots of extremely expensive labor, I think that's kind of where we're going on that. On the C Spire text line, I pick up any coins on the ground only because it has "In God We Trust" on it. Mike in Biloxi. I pick up pennies off the ground. 100 of them makes $1.
That's true.
Mike in Biloxi. I'm 70 years old. Honestly, I can't remember the last time I saw a penny on the ground, or any money for that matter. When companies round up to the next nearest nickel, sounds like a 4% price hike. Well, that would only mean if you're buying something that cost $1. Think of all, Thompson Greenwood says, they'll eventually eliminate all physical currencies. Think of all the tax fraud that would be eliminated. I kind of just wonder when we get to the point we eliminate the dollar. Really thought about that. Tim from the 662, I pick up every penny I see. I want to ask you guys again, when the heck's the last time you saw pennies on the ground? I haven't seen it.
What about you looking for the remote that's fallen in between the couch, and you always find like a couple pennies there, right?
Meaning people have been sitting on the couch that had pennies in their pockets?
I don't know.
Oh my God!
That's the last time I've ever handled a penny was when I found one in between the couch cushions.
Matt in Burnsville says, I've read iPhones cost Apple around $10 to produce. Not what they report on their financial statements, Matt. And that is based on the CPA firm, the public accounting firm that audits them. So who cares? What if it cost a penny? The market determines what the price should be. That's the only fair arbiter of pricing, not government. Not government. So, Apple's net income is astonishing, has been. Because what they produce is in high demand, produces enormous value, and people really don't complain that much that I've ever seen about the cost of the products they make. And they're willing to part with their money in exchange for it. So, last year I think Apple did about $380 billion of gross revenue, top-line revenue, and produced about just under 120, which really is incredible. It's a tremendous net profit. But you don't hear a lot talking about that. NVIDIA is even more profitable from a profit percent perspective than that. Okay, folks are texting in. Yesterday I picked a penny and a dime up. Man, I need to go where you guys are because I don't see anything. They're not in the SuperTalk headquarters parking lot because we're all broke, I think. So we don't have any money. I started collecting wheat pennies when I was a young fellow. Currently have over 100, the oldest being 1912. I buy a 95-cent large fountain drink twice per day, says Jeff in Grenada. I hand them $1 bill and walk away. We can kill the nickel, too. There you go. I do deliveries, food, and groceries, and find between 1 to 10 pennies a day. I'm just shocked at this. I need to go where you guys are. Coming right back, we're at the Armed Forces Museum. Stay with us.
From with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our show
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Well, there's a black man.
Welcome back, everyone. It's
with black hair.
We're with you from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum, the heart of Camp Shelby. That's exactly where we are, just south of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. We're pleased to welcome now Dr. Andrew Wiest. He's a history professor at the University of Southern Mississippi, also a guest speaker for the Memorial Day ceremonies. Dr. Wiest, thanks for coming on. Always good to see
thanks
you.
for having me.
Yeah, so this is so appropriate and proper to have ceremonies today as we approach Memorial Day on Monday, and in particular to at this museum recognizing those Mississippians who serve their country in uniform. This is an incredible facility.
Yes, sir. It's we deal with National Guard museums all over the country, and this is one of the crown jewels. There is certainly no doubt about that. It's one of the top ones.
Yeah, they do a great job, and some of the stories that you can find in the exhibits are just fascinating, really. And it's, I don't think most people know about Mississippi's role, prominent role, in all the wars, since we've been going to war, right, in this country.
Long as Mississippi's been around, we've always served greater than our population in the military. And in every war, going all the way back to, the Battle of Buena Vista with Jeff Davis saying stand fast Mississippians all the way up to the present. Mississippians have played a critical role in wars all over the world for us.
Tell us about this book.
The book is called Dogwood, National Guard Unit's War in Iraq. I've spent many years writing about how combat interacts with the young men and now women who fight in wars. And as I was kind of getting over the haze of finishing my last book, which was on Vietnam, I was thinking about what to write next. And I grew up in Hattiesburg. So many of my friends and colleagues and high school mates were National Guardsmen. And I knew that they had served a tour in Iraq, a very costly tour in Iraq in 2005. And I figured it was high time to write about them. So 8 years later, the book is out. And because most of it's based on oral histories, to really get to the stories of the young men and women, you really need to talk to them and to the family members of those who are memorializing today. This National Guard unit went to Iraq, got a job nobody wanted. Leon Collins, their commander, was just speaking to the ceremony a few minutes ago about how we inherited a place in Iraq called the Triangle of Death, which pretty much means you don't want to be there. It's an area that was, when Baghdad fell in 2003, they took all the munitions out of Baghdad, buried them in the desert, and they stuck us on top of them. And the insurgents didn't like that at all. And during that year that we were there, they're about to memorialize the 20th anniversary of having lost 30 soldiers who served with the Mississippi National Guard that year. Not all of whom are Mississippians. Some of them are attached to us. The 211th Armored Cavalry Regiment was attached to us, and also a couple contractors. But paid a very high price for that year. And if you look at what they did, they were one of the great success stories in Iraq. They did their job with aplomb, and they did their job, frankly, with less than the regular Army does its job with, because the National Guard's always a little bit of a stepchild. But they came up with a Mississippi solution for every problem they had, and they covered themselves in glory.
That is awesome. So that had to be fascinating. You said you had to interview and get oral testimony from those in the unit. That had to be incredible.
It was incredible. The people I had the honor to interview, the book centers on one battalion of the 155th. There's 3,000 people in the 155th. It'd be hard to write a book about them. So this book focuses largely on the 150th Combat Engineers, a much smaller subset. And about 200 of them at a forlorn place in Iraq called the Fob Dogwood. Of those 200, I interviewed about 100.
Wow.
And the book focuses most specifically on those soldiers who did not return. And to me, the most meaningful interviews were with the families, the Gold Star families, the families who had sons and husbands and parents who didn't make it back. And those people, their stories are emotional, gripping, and one thing we often forget, and something that we really ought to try to remember on Memorial Day, for those people, the war's still going on. It's something that impacts their lives on a daily basis, and they're the toughest people you could imagine.
Yeah, it's a good point. That it may end, I guess, from a practical perspective, but for those who lost someone, it continues, it endures, it never ends.
In so many interviews, it's so hard to pick one moment that was the key moment, but I'm going to take a risk and pick one moment. 2 days after taking over Fob Dogwood, the 150th lost its first soldier, Sean Cooley, he wasn't even supposed to be on the patrol that day. He'd already been on a patrol, but he knew one of his friends needed him there. And his Humvee hit a buried 115 millimeter artillery shell, and Sean was killed. And was interviewing his father, Jerry. And Jerry always wore sunglasses. That's the only That's the only thing he's going to do to kind of cover up how he's feeling. So he wears sunglasses, but he was just a smiling presence, a wonderful presence, and we were interviewing him about his son's life, and he's really, and his wife Catherine's there as well. They're just giving us great information on who Sean used to be and the kind of wonderful person he was. And then we got up to covering the incident itself, and Jerry didn't break down into tears, but he got up to make a cup of coffee. That was his way of kind of composing himself. And with me was Sean Cooley's commander of the company he was in. Paul Lyon was with me, and he knew that Jerry needed a minute, so he kind of told Jerry how much Sean had meant to the unit, trying to make him feel better. And Jerry said, "I appreciate that. I love that you're telling me that. I know Sean was a great guy." But he said, "I would live under a bridge and eat out of a hubcap if I could see him just one more time." And here we are at that point, 16 years after his loss, and it was still so fresh with him. It was amazing. And to see how Jerry deals with it every day, and Catherine, and Sean's widow, Laura, they're some of the toughest people you'll ever meet. Some of the most honorable Mississippians you'll ever meet.
Man, that's incredible. I can't imagine being in the presence of that, and it's good that they were willing to talk about it and gave you the information that you could record it in this book.
It was tough, and I owe them a lot, but I think they knew that also the story of the National Guard is usually overlooked. The last numbers I have were from 3 years ago, but 3 years ago there were 600 books put out on the U.S. Army. There were 6 put out on the Guard. National Guard is under-researched, it's under-studied, it's under-written about, and that's one of the things I was wanting to do in this book is begin to help to rescue the National Guard story, and I think they knew that this was a step in that direction, and that they really stepped up.
That's interesting. You also said that you wrote a book concerning Vietnam. Yes, sir. Tell me about that.
There's 2 books. There's more than that, but the 2 books that hang together, one's called The Boys 67 Charlie Company's War in Vietnam, and it's structured much the same way as Dogwood, except it focuses on a company, not a battalion, so 160 guys. And these guys were drafted together, trained together, served together, and of those 160, 26 were killed and 105 were wounded. So they had a very difficult year in Vietnam. And I felt at that point Vietnam veterans weren't getting their due. And we had a follow-up book to that because one of the commanders of the unit had died, and they were burying him in Arlington. So the company had joined together to be there for the funeral. And this man was a double amputee, a very brave man. And after the ceremony, I was talking to his wife, Nancy. His name was Jack Benedict. And Nancy said, "I appreciate that you wrote a book about my husband and his heroism, but who's going to write a book about me? Because everything he did, he had a wheelchair most of the time. She was literally pushing him." So I wrote a follow-up book to that, Boys of 67, called Charlie Company's Journey Home, that's about the wives and families.
Wow.
Because
they're part of it,
people.
too.
They sure are.
No doubt about it. Dr. Wiest, thanks for coming on. Really
thank you so much for having me.
Yep, great work. Dr. Andrew Wiest has been our guest. He's a history professor at the University of Southern Mississippi, also a guest speaker for today's Memorial Day ceremony. So we're coming right back, folks. We're taking a break right now. We've got Major General Bobby Ginn joining us at 11:05. Stay with us.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
coming up.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays is live at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. We're at Camp Shelby. That's where the museum is, inside the gates off Highway 49. You should really make your way down here or up here, depending on where you are, or over here, and tour this fabulous facility, which recognizes, commemorates, honors the heroes from Mississippi who served this country in uniform. On the C-Spire text line, we had a question. Brian asked, how do we get Dr. Wheat's book, and I just Googled it real quick, his books, the ones he was talking about. He's written several, and they're widely available through all the normal sources. Amazon.com, of course, is always a good source. Not promoting those guys, but if you want books, they usually have pretty much everything you could think about. I see the Boys of 67, Charlie Company he was talking about, Vietnam's Forgotten Army, talking about the families, and then his latest work, Dogwood, a National Guard unit's war in Iraq, where he recognizes the Guard's contributions and participation in the war. It's pretty neat. What was the name of that last bumper song y'all played at 10:54? What was that, Will? What were you playing there?
The one that we just played? It was Pink Houses by John Cougar Mellencamp. It was when he was John Cougar Mellencamp.
That's right. Yeah. Ben from Madison says regular folks aren't going to like paying that kind of money for a new iPhone, even if it were manufactured in the U.S. I agree. I mean, I think there's a segment of the population that may pay a small premium for an American product, assuming it's equal, exact same product. One produced in this country, one produced outside the country. I think there are people out there that would pay a small premium. I would say largely, though, most people would not. They would save the money on the lower-cost product without any consideration for where it's made. And so I don't think this is going to stick the way it is right now. I think the president's just trying to ratchet up a little bit of pressure on Apple. Hopefully, he and the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, will have a conversation about that. I'm not really a big fan anytime an elected official attacks a company or an individual directly, unless they're breaking the law. I would give an exception to that. So this is a concern for sure. And I still submit that the reason Apple and many other companies offshored their manufacturing processing, the design's done in this country, but the actual physical production of those products done offshore is because of the extremely exorbitant high cost of labor driven by labor unions in this country for decades. That's why those companies sought lower cost production, because it honestly would make many of their products economically unviable. I mean, you could make them here at such a high price given the labor cost and the regulatory cost. That's where I think we ought to be focused, is on really forcing, as part of a trade deal, these other countries to establish regulatory policy equal to ours. That's after we reduce ours, and I'm hoping that that's happening. We're seeing a little bit of that in the Trump administration right now. Just get going on that. Let's keep chipping away at those extremely costly regulations. And, in fact, we shouldn't pass any regulations unless there's an identifiable net benefit. And we also need to be concerned about any sort of impact on our liberty and freedoms that might be invaded upon if these regulations go into effect. Ben from Madison also said, incredibly thankful for all those who served as a nation. I hope I can do more to support those veterans and family members. I agree. I hear you. Was he referring to Only in America by Brooks and Dunn, says Mailman Clayton. You played that as well, didn't you?
I did.
Well, yeah. Okay. You don't see money on the ground because we were all picking it up. Snooze, you lose. Yeah, so it may be right. That could be it. I guess I need to just...
You got to be quicker on the draw, Gerard.
I'm going to have to speed up my gait a little bit, I guess. Maybe been telling people on the text line, several have said, yeah, like somebody said they picked up 10 this week. I just can't. I don't think I've seen 10 in 20 years. Coins on the ground, that is. Maybe you guys all just live in more wealthy areas, more affluent population that are just let money fall out of their pockets and don't care about it. Maybe I need to think about where I hang out. I'm hanging out with poor people. They're not losing their money. If they do, they turn around and pick it up. So, folks, it's time for a break. It's top of the hour. We're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby. Fox News, SuperTalk News coming your way. After that, it's Major General Bobby Ginn, the Adjutant General of Mississippi. Once again at the Armed Forces Museum of Mississippi. Stay with us.
This hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays live from Camp Shelby. We're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum on this Friday, y'all. The Friday before Memorial Day, when we honor America's fallen heroes in uniform. It's our pleasure to welcome now the Adjutant General of Mississippi, Major General Bobby Ginn. General, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Gerard. Glad to be here this morning. Thanks for the invite. I just appreciate you inviting me on your show.
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely.
On a special weekend.
Yes, sir. And we're always pleased to be here. We got to talk about this museum. We can't say enough good things about it, man. It's incredible. It's
unbelievable. Tommy Lofton and his team here, the curator, they do a outstanding job and have for many, many years now. And you know, when other states and other entities come here to visit Camp Shelby, you know, the crown jewel of Camp Shelby is the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum, and they just leave here just so impressed and just cannot get over the history of Camp Shelby and what it's really meant to America in the last 100 and some odd years now. So
the history is incredible. I learned doing the show and interviewing the commander a couple of years ago that when this facility, this installation was in its prime, it extended all the way down the Gulf Coast.
It absolutely did. It was actually it was 760,000 acres and extended all the way down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And during World War II, there was 5 divisions that trained here.
Incredible. 5 divisions.
Yes. Yep.
That is unbelievable. So Mississippi has certainly had a storied history in the nation's military, and in particular in our wars. And interviewing Dr. Wiest earlier on the program from USM, you know, he knows the history of Mississippi's military. Was talking about our outsized participation and contribution to America's military, America's defense. Mississippians respect and love our men and women in uniform.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, you get to go all over the country, and there's a lot of states that are certainly, you know, military friendly, but this state as a whole, I would say, is probably the most military friendly state out there, without a doubt. And again, the Hattiesburg area here supports Camp Shelby, and there's so many military veterans that are retired here. At one time, and I don't know the exact number now, there was 38,000 military retirees just within the Hattiesburg area here.
And it's always interesting and fascinating to learn about people from all over the country that come here specifically for training have never been to Mississippi, come to this area and fall in love with it and find out just how great the state and the people are.
Absolutely. I remember it, and it's been 25 years ago when Senator Inouye, and he's passed now, but he was a senator from Hawaii, the 442nd trained here, the most highly decorated division in World War II.
Wow.
When we first opened this museum, he came and he spoke. And he talked about the horror stories because they were Japanese Americans coming to the Deep South to train, and they had been told horror stories about coming to Camp Shelby. But when they got here, in his speech, he just teared up, and he said, "We could not have been taken care of better."
That's awesome.
Than from the people of the state of Mississippi, and we will always be indebted to you.
What
and
a great testimony.
Just a great story.
That's fantastic. So you've been in this role as Adjutant General now a little over a year, right?
About 9 months now.
Okay, a little less than a year.
All
right.
Yep.
How's it been going?
It's good. We've got a lot of good things going in the Mississippi National Guard. I guess the biggest thing here as of late, as we go through what we call the transformation of contact with Secretary Hegseth and the team up there, and the United States military has to get more mobile and more lethal. They took some armor brigade combat teams and made them mobile brigade combat teams, and there was only 5 in the National Guard. Of course, Mississippi having one of them, the 155th, and we will be retained. The 155 will be retained as one of 2 now Armor Brigade combat teams within the National Guard, which is huge for us. Anytime you can become one of 2 out of 27 total, then that's a big deal. And a lot of the history of the 155 and what they've done in the last many, many years, and Camp Shelby, as a training installation, helped them make that decision. So we're excited about that.
Dr. Wiest, of course, just wrote this book about the National Guard's role, a particular unit in Iraq. And I think often as just American citizens, we don't think about the fact that the National Guard could get assigned a role like that.
Absolutely.
A mission in a foreign country where they're in a war zone.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. And as I was driving over here this morning, in the last 22 years, we had always had a unit deployed somewhere. We never had 100% of all of our forces, both Army and Air, back in Mississippi. And now for the next 3 or 4 months, we will have all of our forces back here in Mississippi until we've got a couple of deployments coming up, a couple of statesides, a couple of southern, down the southern border. But for right now, we've got all of our forces back in Mississippi for just a few months. So, yeah,
they're awesome. I've met so many great members of the Mississippi National Guard and their service, and of course they get called into a myriad of duties as well when we experience disasters. For example, they get mobilized.
Absolutely, kind of a good segue into that. In the last 3 weeks, we the Mississippi National Guard, we've had a hurricane exercise. We've had an earthquake exercise that we talked about, Vigilant Guard, where Northcom came in. We did that up at Camp McCain at Grenada last week. And earlier this week, we opened up the Partners in Preparedness down on the coast with all the county EMA directors and kind of, started getting that mindset of hurricane season coming and, just catastrophic events and kind of preparing for that stateside, as well as some federal missions coming up, whether it be the D.C. mission or a southern border mission or a couple of deployments to the Central Command area.
Okay.
Yep.
General, it's so appropriate and proper, is it not, to have ceremonies here at this fantastic facility on Memorial Day, on and around Memorial Day, and in particular, those Gold Star families that are here and present, who lost a loved one, who paid the ultimate sacrifice in America's military.
Yeah, and it's so appropriate to do that here at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum and just honor those that have given the ultimate sacrifice for the freedom of this great country that we live in. And to have several Gold Star family members here is so special. And just the venue, I was listening to General Collins speak earlier, and just, some of those members of the Mississippi National Guard that lost their life back in 2005. Several of us in the room knew a lot of them personally, and got to see some of their families here, and just gives you a big old lump in your throat, and just special people that has sacrificed the freedom that we all enjoy every day today. So.
Can't ever take it for granted, and I know that they are certainly grateful for what you guys do to just recognize them and make sure that we don't forget them, and that's what this museum does as well.
That's right.
We cannot, should not ever forget, because as soon as we do, we'll pay even a bigger price for forgetting.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right, and we want to make sure that we let those families know and continue to carry that message that we will never, ever forget.
Yeah, and that's important to them. I think what little consolation there that you can provide to someone who lost a loved one, that's it, and it's so proper, so appropriate. And, of course, the goal, and I think our president gets this, is to strengthen our military and ensure that it is based on merit. You've heard Secretary Hegseth talk about that. And that it returns to lethality, the goal being to deter those who would want to do harm to this country.
That's a good point, and that's great, absolutely. And speaking of that, we will have almost 300 of our soldiers working the Army's 250th birthday up in D.C. straight from the Mississippi National Guard, and they were asked. Because they did such a great job during the inauguration to come up there and support that event.
We look forward to that. Congratulations. That is awesome. Major General Bobby Ginn, the Adjutant General of Mississippi, has been our guest. Always pleasure, General.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank you.
We got Major General Leon Collins coming up next. He's the former Adjutant General. Stay with us. We're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You can bet that I stand ready when the wolf growls at the door. Hey, I'm solid. Hey, I'm steady. Hey, I'm true down to the core. And I will always do my duty, no matter what the price. I've counted up the
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. We are waiting the arrival of Major General Leon Collins, former Adjutant General of Mississippi. Really enjoyed talking to Major General Ginn, the current Adjutant General. They're such fantastic people, and we are so honored that they serve in the National Guard in the U.S. military. General, you ready? Yes, sir. All right. We're getting the headset all squared away for Major General Collins, and we'll be with you in just a moment here at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby. All right. All squared away. Major Collins, thanks for coming on.
Oh, good. Thanks for having me today.
You bet. So we just got through speaking to Adjutant General, Major General Ginn, talking about the Memorial Day ceremonies, and it's so appropriate, General Collins, to recognize those that paid the ultimate sacrifice in our military. And no better setting and venue in the state of Mississippi than here at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. It's incredible. And Major General Ginn, of course, talking about the Gold Star families on hand. it's the least we can do to keep their memory alive.
Absolutely, and it is fitting to have a ceremony here at Camp Shelby and at the Armed Forces Museum, where we got so many artifacts and memories here in this building of men and women who have fought for our country over the years, not just here recently, but for decades and decades past. But to remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice is the absolute least that we can do, because they gave all that they had to make sure that you and I have the opportunity to live and play and work in a free society.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Mississippi has had an outsized participation in America's armed forces. Anything you would attribute that to, Major Cox?
Well, Mississippians have always had a propensity to serve. So, it shouldn't come as a surprise when we've had men and women step up to the plate and raise that right hand, sign their name, and say, I'm willing to go and fight whoever is opposing our country anywhere, anytime. So that's why you see more, I guess you'd say, like you say, the outproportion number of Mississippians who have served.
Yeah. It really is incredible, and it does your heart good to be a Mississippian and knowing that you're surrounded by people that love their state, love their country, and, as you say, have a propensity to serve and are willing to step up and do that, often knowing that they're taking a risk to some extent, even in the National Guard. Yeah. They could be assigned anywhere in the world in a hot spot, and they could be under fire.
Well, our military services are much different these days than they were 50 years ago. If you serve in the National Guard, Army or Air Force, or if you serve in one of the reserve forces or the Army Reserve, Air Force Reserve, Marine Corps Reserve, Naval Reserve, when you sign up, you know that there's always a possibility that you could get called. Because our Army and all of our services are much smaller now than they used to be, then in order to execute a conflict, we have to depend on those reserve components in order to be able to fill out the ranks.
Makes sense. This facility, Camp Shelby, world class, and what a role it has played in the defense of our nation and in training our troops.
Well, and that came very evident during the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, because we had troops come from all over the United States to Camp Shelby to train, to prepare to go to Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's an ideal place because Camp Shelby is such a large training facility. But not only is it large, we have state-of-the-art training facilities here. So it would have been difficult in our case when I was commanding at 155 to go to an active duty post, because it was already full. You probably more likely you got a full division sitting there on that post. Mm-hmm. But to come to a place like Camp Shelby, then you got pretty much the run of the post, where you can do all the necessary training that you need to do in order to prepare yourself. And that's important because you can't cut any corners. You got to be able to get it all done. You try it. If you don't do so well on the training, you back up, you try it again. That way, when you actually do get overseas, then you have a good, you're confident that you can get the job done. And that means a lot.
Sure. It's pretty neat, isn't it, that people from all over the world have been on this facility, many of whom have never been to the great state of Mississippi. I think many of them come with maybe an unfavorable perception, but once they get here and they get in this facility and they, more importantly, meet the people, they fall in love with it.
Well, and there's an active duty unit here at Camp Shelby that's stationed here that provides a lot of training. And I've spoken to several of those soldiers who came here, and they would say, I got orders said I was going to Camp Shelby, Mississippi. I didn't know where it was. And they said I had to look it up on a map. But once they got here, they fell in love with the place. I mean, for one thing, the weather, it's a little hot, but year round the weather is great. Yeah. If you like outdoor sports, if you like fishing, if you like hunting, if you want to go down to the Gulf Coast, you're only about an hour away. Yeah. I mean, there's so much to offer here that when their tour of duty was ended, they didn't want to leave.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it's they find out what you and I as Mississippians already know. This is a pretty good place.
It is. Yeah absolutely.
this museum, it's top notch.
It is. I mean, you look far and wide before you find one that has the artifacts, all the pictures, the history that they've been able to put in this facility. And it was redone, several years back. It was already nice, but they made it even nicer.
Yeah, it really is incredible. And I think anybody who tours it is usually a bit surprised to find out just how active a role Mississippi and Mississippians have played in the United States military.
Well, and of course, the history of Camp Shelby goes all the way back. My grandfather, Lewis Wilson, demobilized after World War I here at Camp Shelby.
How about that?
Yeah.
and at one time, that's something that just always I have a hard time wrapping my head around. This installation extended all the way to the Gulf Coast.
Oh, yeah, it was huge.
It's incredible. And it continues to thrive today. I mean, how many troops go through this place today? There's a bunch.
It's a bunch. But to your point, I mean, there were full divisions coming through here.
Well, that's what the general just said.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked at that. When you've got to have a pretty sizable facility to accommodate divisions, do you not?
Yeah. Well, and now the cantonment area today is much smaller than what it used to be, because there were a lot more buildings on posts. Obviously, if they were built after World War I, they're all deteriorated and been torn down. But the facilities today are really, really nice for weekend training and annual training. You won't find any facilities any better.
And we can't overlook the fact that it's pretty valuable to the economy of the local area as well.
Well, especially when we were doing all the mobilizations here for Iraq and Afghanistan, starting about 2002 and going forward, the local economy really benefited, because there was so much stuff that was being procured on a local basis. This area, Hattiesburg in particular, depends on really three things: the medical, which you got Forest General Hospital up there, education with the University of Southern Mississippi and William Carey, but then the third leg of that stool is our military.
Yeah.
So they depend on the military very, very heavily.
It really is incredible. And we should also note that our state government, our legislature, is very friendly to our military, very supportive of this installation, the National Guard as well, of course.
Yeah, well, be it from Mississippi, I talked about the great weather. We do have some bad weather here sometimes. We have hurricanes, That's right. And, time and time again, the National Guard has been called out to assist with the recovery during hurricanes. So our elected officials in this state have a lot of high praise for the National Guard.
Yeah. The armament of war, shall we say, the tools of war are certainly changing rapidly. We're becoming a much more digital-oriented military. And so when someone joins the U.S. Armed Forces, they get a pretty significant education in that regard.
Well, and they do, because with all of the new technology that we have, and even when you look in businesses today, everybody's talking about artificial intelligence, and the military is talking about that too. The last time the Army had some major weapon systems coming on was back in the 70s.
Yeah, incredible. So the advances there, but things are certainly looking up, and we are so grateful to the men and women who serve in America's armed forces, and you too as well, General. Thank you for your service, and thanks for being part of these ceremonies, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Major General Leon Collins, former Adjutant General of Mississippi, has been our guest. Once again, we're at Camp Shelby at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. It's Middays, coming right back.
From the Sebring.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays live from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby. It's our pleasure to welcome now Tommy Lofton, the director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. Tommy, always good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Always great to have y'all here. This is a big day for us, obviously, with Memorial Day weekend and our Memorial Day ceremony today, and just an honor all around, and glad to have y'all here as part of it.
Yeah, it's awesome and quite fitting, of course, to hold ceremonies here at the museum. You got a great facility for that, a great setting, and some Gold Star families on hand as well, right?
We did. We had quite a few here today, and it was a great turnout. It was a great ceremony. You know, every year going into Memorial Day weekend, we pick Friday to set the tone for the entire weekend, and this year, especially as your listeners have heard already, was important because we had our 20th anniversary of the deployment of the 155th, and the 28 souls that were lost on that deployment are very important to us. And you could see it in the faces and in the memories there of the individuals in the audience who were on that deployment. It is still something that sticks with them today, and remembering their brothers that were lost. So for us, it was a huge honor to be able to recognize them and spend time setting the tone for the weekend and reminding folks about that.
Yeah, and Dr. Andrew Wiest, who was on the program earlier today, was making that point as well, highlighting that the war may be over, but for these families who lost a loved one in the war, it never ends.
That's exactly right. You know, in my own family, we had the fortune of having a hero. Gerald Johnston was one of the pilots we've honored here before. His items are on exhibit in here from his B-17. He flew the Mississippi mission in World War II and was killed on what would have probably been his last mission. You know, it's still important to our family this many years later, 80 years later, since his death. It is still something that we take great pride in remembering him, and it still hurts to a lot of the family to not have him here, or
sure,
not had that many years with him. So it was quite a moving thing too to see so many Gold Star family members here and to hear some of their stories and talk about their sons and daughters that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. And it just reminded me, you know, at times obviously we can get really wound up as a state or as a nation with each other, when it comes to politics especially, and money and things like that. But let's try to remember, you know, as we enjoy our hamburgers, hot dogs, and barbecues, and fishing, and whatever we choose to do with our weekend, and especially with our days off on Monday, let's remember what the holiday is about. Let's remember it's about those fallen Mississippians, and if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be able to enjoy all of this, or we wouldn't be able to argue with each other over.
That's
over
well
things.
said. That's absolutely true. And Mississippi, as we have discussed with Dr. Wiest, with Generals Collins and Ginn, has had an outsized role in America's military, and in particular in our wars. Mississippians have servants' hearts. They love their state. They love their country. And they answer the call.
That's true. And it goes back, as you'll see in our exhibits, it even goes back pre-statehood.
It's incredible.
Mississippians from day one, if you will, and even before European contact, we have had significant service in fields of battle, and in the air, on the land, and the sea, as the Marines say. And, you know, we should take a great deal of pride in being Mississippians. I know sometimes the rest of the country may look down on us, but we have a lot to be proud of.
No doubt about it.
We come up in first place, I think, when it comes to patriotism and service. And for those who don't have really any Memorial Day plans or not sure what to do with the holiday, feel free to come see us. We're open all day Saturday from 9 to 4. We're free. All you got to do is have a valid ID to show to get through the gate, and we would love for you to come see us. And if you don't have anyone specifically you're connected to honor, find someone in here. There's plenty of individuals in here who
good point.
Who have served in a number of our collections. Frankly, I'd just ballpark guess maybe half of the stuff we have on display right now are from Mississippians who paid the ultimate sacrifice and did not come home in the way that they had hoped or intended. And it's a huge honor for us as a staff every day to come to work. And in a sense, I guess every day in a sense is Memorial Day for us as a staff. But we take a lot of pride in doing what we do and trying to help others remember what this holiday is about.
We had a couple of folks on our text line that asked about where they could pick up the book that Dr. Weiss talked about. And, of course, he's written multiple books, and we understand that you guys have them here.
We have it here, in fact. And he's here all day doing a book signing, and I think we'll be around this weekend. He has been gracious enough, too. The proceeds for his sales are going to the museum today. So if you are in the area and want to get a copy of the book, or feel free to call the museum, and we can get him to sign one, and you can pick it up or whatever when you're able. And but we would love to be able to make that book available to folks, and it's a great read. Admittedly, I haven't finished the book yet, but I've at least started and gotten halfway through it, and it is phenomenal. And it's really interesting to see how many names of individuals are still in service now, even after so many years of multiple deployments and other things. There's people in there who still have a very important and active role today in the Mississippi National Guard.
It's good that he was able to have conversations with those that served in that unit, in the Guard unit, and get that recorded is what's really important.
Oh, definitely.
While they're still able to tell those stories. And he makes a point that the National Guard had an active role in many of our conflicts, and they don't get quite the attention the recognition, and it's what he's done here.
That's true, and it's a very historic service going back to the birth and pre-birth of our nation that deserves more recognition. And, you know, for us, we're quite fortunate to have Dr. Weiss down the road here, and I spent almost 11 years at the National World War II Museum doing interviews with 80 and 90-year-old World War II veterans. And it was hard for them to even talk about things that many years later from an emotional and memory standpoint, but it's also harder to recall things the older you get.
Sure.
I see that more and more every day now. And I think getting these individuals now in the way that he's been doing this, and Southern Miss and other institutions have been doing this, it's important, especially because a lot of these veterans or folks who are even still in the service have been on multiple deployments, and at some point some of this all starts to run together in their memory banks. So it is better to try to do that now, and what I think would be neat as a historian is follow up with some of these folks another 20 years from now and see what are their reflections, memories, thoughts with even further time out. And that was something we didn't do as much with former veterans and former generations. So it'd be a neat project for folks down the road.
What's going on at the museum? Any new exhibits underway?
So we're working on, still working on some new exhibits within World War II, within Civil War. We actually put a pause on that for a brief time. I think the last time you and I spoke, we had some of that underway, and then we had a little bit of a roof leak issue and a few other environmental things. But thankfully, all of that is fixed now. So we are plugging along on trying to do that. And we also have a podcast that we're sort of co-sponsors on. It's the Unauthorized Podcast of the Pacific War. If folks want to check that out, our deputy director here, Seth Perrodin, is the co-host on that. And it's a neat way to be able to talk about the Pacific War and other things. And we've got some other neat plans we're working on right now, and some new artifacts that we want to be able to get out and let the public see. And so if you have been here recently, come back, because there's a few things that will be changing here in the coming weeks and months that I think you'll appreciate.
You get approached often by families who realize, I guess, when they're rummaging through things that they're just kind of stuck in boxes or in attics or in closets, and they find these relevant artifacts, and they'll often give you guys a call, right?
That's right. And that's how we survive. That's how museums come to exist. We don't just find this stuff, and we can't buy all this stuff. So it is important that we receive those kinds of donations, because let's face it, if we don't tell these stories and we don't carry the future of these individuals even long after they're gone, they could be lost to history. And that's what we don't want to happen. And it is hard for folks to let go of a lot of those artifacts, but when you consider some of these are in your attics and closets and under your beds, more people will see them when they come through here every year. And we'll be able to preserve those things for many, many, many years to come. And it's important for us to be able to do that, and it's important for our state.
Plus, it's important that we learn and that we understand our history in that regard, and those artifacts and those stories that they share associated with those. you guys then curate and include in the exhibits, and that tells a story, and we all learn about it. And it's important to keep that memory alive. It's also important that young Americans understand and are exposed to this. You host student groups all the time, right?
Sure. Yeah, we can talk about that in a minute if you want to.
We got another segment coming up with you in the next hour, and we'll talk about it then.
Yes, sir.
We got Tommy Lofton has been our guest. He is the director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. We're stepping aside for a break. Coming right back again at Camp Shelby. Stay with us.
Up of Mississippi Days with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
We're back with you from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby. It's middays. Thanks for joining us today. We'll talk to Tommy Lofton again in the final hour of middays. So, Bruce in DeKalb, one of our listeners, turns out served with General Collins, Bruce Clay, his name, and he wanted me to pass on a hello, and I did so before General Collins left, and he was all smiles and laughing and loved it, and knew exactly, of course, who you were, Bruce. So that's really cool. Appreciate you sharing that. Jeff on the C Spire text line said, "I remember as a little boy in elementary school going on a couple of field trips to Camp Shelby. Always a great place." I actually do too as well, Jeff. In fact, at the store on the base. This was in the 60s when I did it, and, of course, that's when the Vietnam War was going on. And I used to like to build plastic models, from kits back then, and actually got, while here, a plastic kit model of the Huey helicopter and built it when I got home. It's pretty cool. The Huey, of course, was a workhorse in the Vietnam War. We were talking earlier about the Treasury discontinuing minting of the penny, and that's got lots of discussion going on the C Spire text line. Been interesting for sure. Someone here said people just throw them out car windows. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm not seeing them. And somebody said maybe you're not looking down enough when you're walking around. Possibly so. Maybe that's the case. Another person said, "I find most of the coins in lower-income driveways in front of their houses, fast food places, and Walmart." Wow. That's just incredible. Okay.
So the reason why we're talking about all this is because they've decided that they're going to get rid of new pennies, right? New pennies, that's right. Not mint them anymore because it costs 3.7 cents per penny to mint them. Some $83 million spent in the hole, I should say, minting pennies last year. And I think it's just a matter of time, based on that, when the nickel will be eliminated.
The nickel's even worse than the penny.
Is it really?
It's almost 14 cents per nickel.
Okay, well, I misspoke. I just assumed that because the nickel is 5 cents, five times a penny, that the minting of it, but you don't know because the cost process associated with producing the nickel evidently is more than the penny. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll be darned. Brian in Madison says, "So with some manufacturing returning to the U.S., do you think our products will be made to last like they used to decades ago?" I mean, I don't know that that's as big a deal. I think there was an issue many years ago, decades ago, as you say, where there was clearly a difference in the quality. But I dare say most people buy products now that are made abroad. I mean, your vehicles, the vast majority of the vehicles in this country are not assembled here. I think the vehicles are of much higher quality, honestly, than they were. We went through a period of time where they kind of got plasticized in the 70s and 80s and a bit in the 90s. I would say, but they're a lot more expensive. That's not the case. These are American companies for the most part. I mean, back in those days, it was products made by foreign companies in foreign countries. Most of what we're consuming here are made in foreign countries, but they're engineered and designed by American companies. I don't think, for example, the iPhone, I think is a very high-quality product, and it's made abroad, but it's designed and engineered here. So I don't know that will make any difference. Now, it's absolutely true if there's some reshoring of manufacturing. I think you'll see, of course, more modern factories sprout up, most of which will be fully automated and won't have people on assembly lines working in them. But it's going to take a while to spin that up if that happens whatsoever. It really depends on how this whole tariff debacle sort of shakes out. See what happens there. Keep the penny and discontinue the nickel. You can make 5 cents with pennies, but not the other way around.
That's true.
Rest in peace to those machines that mash out the penny and put an image on it. Says Thomas in Greenwood. Also says your Cadillac has tons of Chinese parts on it. I know that, Thomas. That's what I was just saying. That I don't. I happen to think that the quality of American manufactured vehicles, of course, they're not necessarily fully assembled in this country, but they're designed in this country. Some are assembled here, but they incorporate parts that are made abroad. Many are assembled in Mexico or Canada. I mean, you guys know the story there. I think the quality is quite high, honestly. But we're stepping aside for a break right now. Little Tom Petty bumping us out of this segment. It's top of the hour. It's high noon in Mississippi. We're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum for Memorial Day at the heart of Camp Shelby, coming back with a final afternoon hour of middays. Tommy Lofton, director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum, joins us again at 12:20.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. Hour 3, the afternoon portion of the program is now live. The Element Wealth Studio has been relocated to the heart of Camp Shelby. We're here at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. It's Memorial Day. That's why we're here. Always an honor to be here on this fantastic installation, a military installation, training our National Guard troops down in South Mississippi. Really a good place to be in advance of Memorial Day. So, we've been talking about the elimination of the penny, no longer going to be minted anymore in this country. Really something. Didn't see that coming. But it makes sense because we're losing money while we're minting these pennies. So, of course, that makes total sense. And you were just telling us, Will, that it's even more expensive to mint the nickel.
And, the nickel's about 14 cents per. So there you go.
That's incredible. 14 cents to mint a coin that values at a nickel. It doesn't sound like a very good deal. Incredible. So this one big beautiful bill. It made it through the House, headed to the United States Senate 2 members of the House voted against the legislation, and 1 member voted present. So final vote 215 to 214. That just goes to show you how narrow are the numbers in the United States House of Representatives. You got to give it to Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. He did incredible job in coalescing his conference around this legislation, something the president was really pushing hard to get through, and he came in and closed the deal. You know, was it yesterday or maybe day before, those who had concerns about the bill, the Freedom Caucus in particular, that felt like it didn't go far enough with respect to cutting spending, and even spending cuts that were incorporated didn't really kick in for a few years, and they had concerns about that. So the Speaker and some of those members of that caucus had a meeting with the president to try to work through it. So the main outcome of that meeting was that the imposition of work requirements for the able-bodied coverage group, able-bodied adult coverage group in the Medicaid program, the bill sought to impose a work requirement. Had to work 20 hours a week minimum. You could also substitute community service or some sort of education and training in lieu of actual employment to qualify for Medicaid under that coverage group. But that didn't kick in the bill until 2029. Well, that's an eternity, especially when you consider that you could have a complete change in power in the Congress and even in the White House. It's certainly possible. And in the meantime, you're not saving the money for that 4-year period of time that is expected to be saved as a result of imposing these work requirements. So they did manage to speed that up. It goes into effect in 2026. Now, doesn't affect the state of Mississippi because the state of Mississippi is one of the 10 states that has not expanded Medicaid. The expansion of Medicaid, I think, is often misunderstood. It just simply means that the program would provide coverage, make coverage in the Medicaid system available to able-bodied adults. Standard-based traditional Medicaid doesn't apply to able-bodied adults. It's for children, for pregnant women, for the blind and disabled, and also for low-income elderly. That is what the original safety net premise was of Medicaid. It was the Affordable Care Act that also added low-income, able-bodied adults to the program, but without a work requirement. So this bill would impose a work requirement as drafted and as passed in the House. It speeds that up, pulls that forward to 2026 as opposed to the original draft, which was 2029. And then the blue states, you got some of the holdouts there that wanted a higher deduction for the state and local tax situation. The threshold presently is $10,000, and the bill as originally drafted would increase it to $30,000. They compromised at $40,000. Several members of the House, Republicans, especially those from the blue states, I think there was one from Hawaii, California, the rest New York, that were seeking to increase the threshold. They wanted it to be either unlimited or bump it up to as much as $120,000. It's incredible to think that you'd have some folks, this would apply to a small number of people, that would pay $10,000 a month of state and local taxes. It's certainly easier to achieve that in a state like New York, where property taxes in particular and income taxes are way up there. But still, though, that's high. They got to compromise at $40,000 at the end of the day. Now, I object to that. I think that's a situation where the states that have a much more palatable, reasonable state and local tax environment, such as Mississippi, compared to those states, are essentially, now a lot of people say, well, you're paying for that. Well, the way you're paying for it is that there could be cuts elsewhere that would apply more universally, such as to taxpayers in Mississippi, if the threshold were not lifted. That's really where you're paying, the more reasonable tax states are paying for it. So that's something that is also incorporated. I think, honestly, that the Republicans in the House had an opportunity to do even more with respect to cost cutting, spending cuts, especially around the Medicaid program. We could have seen deeper cuts there, but they didn't. And the president, I think, is a good reason for that, a great reason for that. He made it pretty clear he didn't really want to mess with those programs. He just wanted to get this bill passed and maybe take that up later. As it stands right now, it does increase the debt ceiling by $4 trillion. Now, that's expected to accommodate the increase in our debt for less than 2 years. So that means that economists and analysts and other people that really track all this stuff at a very deep, detailed level expect that the deficits will continue, $2 trillion plus deficits to be specific. And by all accounts, economists agree that this bill is going to increase even on top of the expected deficits and debt. This bill is going to increase it even greater. So we're going in the wrong direction with respect to that. Now, the White House contends that this bill is going to stimulate economic growth significantly, and thus revenues will be increased. I personally don't see that occurring at the same rate that it did when we went from the Obama-era tax environment to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed in 2017, the original Trump tax cuts. We did, in fact, see a 33% increase in revenues in the subsequent years when tax rates went down, something the Democrats will never discuss. They blame all the deficits and debt which increased and which occurred during the Trump administration and then even during the Biden administration on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Never do they point to spending as a culprit in that math. They just don't accept that there's any amount of spending, that, as a matter of fact, that is not warranted and not necessary, and without which disaster would occur in the country. It'd be catastrophic. The fear-mongering is outrageous. But it's disappointing that we didn't get more. Now, the Senate has a chance. It's going to be in the Senate. And it is expected that they are going to, it's hard to believe that the Senate is going to perhaps trim down the spending and address some of these issues. And they may even adjust some of the tax cuts. And what does all this mean to you? Well, first and foremost, your taxes are going to stay the same because the original Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is what's in effect right now, that's how you pay your taxes right now, that was scheduled to expire at the end of the year. The good news is that's going to be continued, in fact, made permanent. So that's good. But there are some enhancements to that as well, such as increasing the standard deduction by $1,000 for singles and a couple of $1,000s for couples that file joint returns. So that's good stuff. And if you're older than 65 and your income's less than $75,000 as an individual, $150,000 as a couple, you get an additional $4,000 standard deduction tacked on to the standard. We're coming right back with Tommy Lofton, director of the Armed Forces Museum.
Interrupt this program. Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays is live from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby. We welcome back Tommy Lofton, the director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. All right, so Tommy, before we ended our first segment, we were talking about students and classes that have toured the facility. You've hosted many of them.
We've had quite a few. In fact, I haven't even stopped long enough to count how many we've had so far this year as far as field trips and things go, but quite a few school groups coming through now, and it's great that people are starting to be more aware that we're here.
Yeah.
Of course, I know school's wrapping up now, but I'm hoping in the fall and even next spring that teachers will know that we're a resource for history, for military history, and for a great free field trip. It costs nothing to come through here, and there's a lot of other opportunities and things at Camp Shelby that we can open students up to and maybe see some neat things. We've got environmental programs here and work with trees and turtles and everything from that to maybe tank demonstrations to whatever else is going on out here. So we invite more and more school groups and public groups too. We've had a number of churches come through as well and bring some of their what would you call them, I guess, senior adults out here to tour the museum. And then we've had various, banks and other companies come out and have sort of retreats and or continuing education type programs and things out here. So it's been very busy this year, and even so far this calendar year we have been steady going. So
it's so important to expose the youngsters in our country to our history with respect to the military and war in general, just to understand and appreciate Mississippi's role.
It's very true. Even within schools, and that's from talking to teachers and other folks, if they're lucky enough to get to teach some of the history, especially modern history, they're sort of restricted at times to battles and keeping things very broad. What's fun for us is you can either build on that or introduce that to students here, but also tie in stories.
Yeah.
And so if you're coming down here with a group from the Mississippi Delta, from Tupelo, from Jackson, Madison, Meridian, wherever, from the coast, we've got all kinds of people within this museum, within our exhibits, that you can take back to the classroom and relate to your students from their own hometowns or maybe their own schools. Same is true for universities. We just had a group come through this past week for the first time, a class that's a World War II class from Ole Miss. Had a blast getting to show them around on Monday, and it was neat sort of getting their perspective on World War II and Mississippi's role in the war and seeing what they learned from or what stories they captured while they were here. And I'm anxious to hear more about it from their professors here in the near future.
Wow, that's neat.
But I think, things like that we do. Obviously, we work with Southern Miss since they're in our backyard and William Carey quite frequently. But we're not just a resource for young schools, but also for your universities, for community colleges, and frankly, the general public as well. We want people to be able to come in here and leave with some renewed sense of patriotism, and again, maybe find something, even if they're not interested in the guns and the artillery pieces and all that stuff, find a story or find an individual that makes an impact on you in some way and carry their story on from here. Tell people about them or maybe make changes to your life and use them as an example and that kind of thing.
Well, it's one thing certainly to read about it in books or hear about it from an instructor, but it's yet another to be up front, close and personal, and with these artifacts that came from whatever the scenario was.
Yeah, it's I'm sitting here looking out the door here, and we're almost arm's length reach here from Casey Casanova's case. First female Mississippian killed in action in any war, and an only child. Her mother was here today, Miss Paula. You've interviewed her before here. Yeah. She's something that we're around the same age. I still remember when she was killed in action, and to be able to see her uniform and see her artifacts here every day, to tell her story to people, and especially young people, and have them walk away with this renewed sense of patriotism that's
a good point.
And it's something we need more of. And again, sadly, a lot of the military history or the individuals who fight are left out a lot of the textbooks and things. And this gives us a chance to have students relate to real people and real heroes within our state.
Yeah, it does. And of course, it's Memorial Day, and you've got a pretty extensive schedule of events, right?
We do. We've had a great ceremony this morning. We've had wreath layings outside our Gold Star Families Monument, and then we have one at the 155th Monument. We were honored to be able to recognize their deployment 20 years ago in a very, very horrible place to have to fight. And it was a unique experience. In fact, we still have some of the veterans hanging around right now, actually talking in the lobby there. And it was neat to see them reconnect. Some of them don't see each other very often, but it was neat for me to hear their stories, see their faces, and share their emotions in a lot of ways with remembering the dead from their deployment 20 years ago, that the people who paid the ultimate sacrifice and gave everything for us to be able to have the freedoms that we have today. It's just such a powerful statement for Mississippi that we have so many people willing to wear the uniform, but then also realize in doing that there's another commitment to it that they may not really like the idea of, but they're not going to shy away from if they're called to have to give their life.
And General Collins talked about that. He did a great job of highlighting that. He says, when you sign those papers, you sign up that what you're getting into essentially, and you could be called at any moment in time. And in the case of Cam Shelby, now, of course, involved in training our National Guard troops, the same thing applies there. And they come from all over the world. They go through the training here, world-class training, best you can get. And they know that they could be called into action. And of course, Dr. Weeks, we had on earlier, he decided to highlight the National Guard's role.
That's right.
in war that doesn't get talked about, doesn't get discussed, doesn't get recorded and written about. What a great job he did with the book that you
right.
actually have available here.
That's right. If you know people in the National Guard, talk to them about their service. It's a huge passion for a lot of people and a unique service opportunity that I think most people aren't really clear on. How is it different from the reserves or from active duty service? And please take time this weekend to remember the fallen, but also reflect on those who are still serving and willing to go and make that sacrifice as well. And I hope I hope this weekend that people do enjoy themselves, but also have been listening here to Super Talk today. I'm hoping that they take away something with a sense of pride and patriotism and memorialization for our heroes.
The purpose of Memorial Day. We should also call out that's distinguished from Veterans Day, where we recognize all veterans who at any point in time wore the uniform, but Memorial Day specifically, we remember those who gave their lives in service to their country, and that's a little different situation. That's why we're off Monday. We take a long holiday weekend. You're right. We should certainly enjoy that, but it's important that we remember. And wow, this museum does a great job, of course, of keeping those memories alive of these individuals that served.
That's our mission. That's what we're a 100% state-funded museum, and we're very fortunate. And thank goodness for the state of Mississippi and for your listeners and taxpayers, everybody. It is our. We take a great sense of pride and honor in being able to represent our state as a museum. We've had people here recently from other museums around the United States, and it was great to get to show off what we have here and our capabilities as a museum, but also the stories and the lineage that we have of service in our state. But we want Mississippians to understand that too, and not just take that for granted. Please know, too, for anybody who's watching or listening, the museum is open this weekend. We're open the rest of the day till 4 o'clock. We'll be open tomorrow from 9 to 4, and we'll be open on Monday, on Memorial Day, for folks who are looking for something to do. And we're free. Feel free to look at us or look us up on social media and check out our website as well. And please, come see us. Even if it's not this weekend, come see us.
Tommy, if a student group or the like would like to tour the museum, how can they coordinate that?
Best thing to do is call the museum, reach out to the front desk, let us know kind of when you're looking at coming, and we can set up availability on a tour based on your numbers and help you make those arrangements.
Makes perfect sense. Well, it's always an honor, a privilege to be here with you on the museum around this Memorial Day, as we have been for the last few years. And it's particularly gratifying for me to meet the men and women who serve in uniform. They're just high-quality individuals, and they represent our state and our country so well. Tommy, appreciate it, man.
Always good to see you, Joe.
You bet. Thanks for coming on. Folks, we're coming right back. We got half an hour of middays left. Once again, we're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby. Stay with us.
From the Gerard Gibert, going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
There you go, a little Jackson Brown bumping us into this segment of Middays. We're live at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. Happy Memorial Day, everyone. Get out and enjoy it, the long weekend, but do not forget about our fallen heroes, those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country, wore the nation's uniform. We are certainly grateful eternally to them. Can't ever repay them for what they did for the great nation. So we were diving a little bit into the one big beautiful bill and what it could mean to you for your taxes. Again, first and foremost, the Trump tax cuts, so-called Trump tax cuts, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, passed in 2017. It got a redo, if you will. It is going to be extended on a permanent basis, as is. So that is super good news. That's obviously the most critical component of the bill. In my view, Will, I kind of wish we would have just done that and called it a day and got it passed and then tackle some of these other issues in the future measures. The waters have been muddied here, and so it took longer than I think it would have had we just settled on, let's just pass what we have in place right now. So it's a little bit disingenuous to think about tax savings that you'll realize from the passing of this bill, mainly because it's a savings compared to the Obama-era tax environment, but minimal savings in a couple of nuances, new changes, small changes, compared to what you're paying right now. For example, as we talked about going into the break, increasing the standard deduction by $1,000 that's just an amount you reduce your income by before you apply the tax calculation to it. $1,000 for an individual, $2,000 for married filing joint couples. The exemption for tax on tips, it actually is not structured as an exemption, nor is the change in the way overtime is taxed. It's a deduction as opposed to an exemption. All that really means is that you'll still have taxes withheld from your tips, from your overtime, if you're eligible and qualify. There's an income limitation on both. It's $160,000 a year. And then with respect to tips, all your tips would be deducted from your gross income reported before taxes are calculated. With respect to overtime, it's $10,000 and $20,000 respectively for those who file single versus joint. So it's not an exemption, just to be clear, meaning that it is your gross income is reduced by those amounts before taxes are withheld during the year out of your wages. It's a deduction, meaning you have to square it up when you file your tax return. Now, you could make some adjustments with your whoever runs your payroll. You could certainly visit with them and make some adjustments to the way your records are set up for payroll tax withholding or tax withholding purposes, so that you essentially achieve what it would equate to an exemption. But you'd have to take action with your employer to do that. It wouldn't happen automatically. You'd have to request some adjustments in the systems that produce your payroll. But it's a deduction, not an exemption, and that's the difference. The other thing is Social Security. The president talked a lot about that on the campaign trail, that he wanted to exempt Social Security from federal taxation, income taxation. That did not happen. That is not included in the bill. Rather, what is included is an additional $4,000 standard deduction. So that's different than a complete exemption. It just increases for those who are over 65, whose income as an individual is below $75,000, $150,000, married, filing joint. They get an additional $4,000 added to their standard deduction before income tax is calculated. So that's certainly different than what would have occurred had all Social Security benefits been exempt from federal income tax. A little different situation. But that's the way the bill stands right now from an individual provisions perspective. There are several provisions that apply to businesses, most notably what's called the qualified business deduction that is being extended. And so all that really means is that if you're a small business but you file as a C Corp, you're structured as a C Corp, and thus the income flows to you to file as an individual, this qualified business deduction allows you to deduct 20%. It's qualified business income deduction is what it's called, QBI. To deduct presently 20%. So if you're in your business, you make $100,000 a year, you get to deduct $20,000 of that down to $80,000. Then it passes through to you individually for purposes of filing your tax return. That's actually increasing. It's increasing a couple of points to 22%. 22%. So that's a little additional relief for small businesses that file their income taxes as a pass-through entity is what it's called. So that's good news. And then there's just this immediate expensing. That's a huge provision, folks, that will have a marked increase, I believe, in capital investment, which is the primary way this tax legislation, I think, will boost economic growth. And all that really means is that when you're a business, depending on the size, but overall, in general, a business, when they buy equipment, what's called capital expense, computer systems would be an example. They can write off the full amount of that in the year of purchase rather than depreciating it, expensing it over a number of years, an extended period of time. You get the immediate benefit, reducing your income, your gross revenues to calculate income taxes by the amount of that investment in the year of investment. So that's good news. That is being re-implemented with respect to restored to a full amount. It has been decreased the last few years. That was the way the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 was written. The other thing is if you build a new factory, so the entire cost of the factory can be written off in the year of the construction. And that's because the president is trying to stimulate the increase in factory construction and just repatriate factories and just the growth of the manufacturing sector in general. So that's pretty good stuff as well. I really like that. That's a good provision. This is in lieu of what had been talked about on the campaign trail, which was to reduce the corporate tax rate on companies who make their goods in the United States down to 15%. I would like to see the corporate tax rate for everybody reduced to 15% rather than this immediate expensing, which just applies to the manufacturing sector immediate expensing of all investment in the factory. And again, the purpose there is to stimulate the creation of factories and manufacturing facilities in this country. The bill also increases spending on border security and defense, significant amount there. There are some cuts to federal pensions for those who were hired before 2014. It's really small the way they're changing that. The clean energy tax credits, that all came about in the poorly named Inflation Reduction Act. Many of those are going to be phased out, and they're trying to move that forward. The House wanted to move it forward. It really didn't happen to the extent I think it should have. Instead of phasing it out from 22 to 28, the Senate, I think, is going to take that up and maybe reduce that. This is terrible. We shouldn't be paying people to install electric hot water heaters, or I should say electric water heaters. We shouldn't be paying people to upgrade their power panels or install solar panels and stuff like that. We got to get rid of all these dumb clean energy subsidies. They're worthless. They're surely a situation where winners and losers are being picked. Let the market determine that. They can still keep making that stuff, but they don't need any help from the federal government to encourage sales. So we'll see what happens when this thing gets down to the Senate. But those are kind of the major provisions. I wish we'd have gotten more cuts to Medicaid. Also, the SNAP work requirements, that extends from the present age of 16 to 54 to 17 to 64. The belief is that if you're between 54 and 64, you can still work, and you should work in exchange for food stamps. We're stepping aside for a break at middays at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum.
This is Joe Cordell. Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Come from the cities and they come from the smaller towns.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby. Final segment today. Memorial Day weekend about to get underway. So Larry and Mize was asking about the $4,000 deduction. It's actually not a deduction on Social Security. It's kind of works out the same. It's an additional standard deduction, and so the standard deduction presently, I think, is $15,000, if I'm not mistaken, Will, and $29,000 or $30,000 single. The former and the latter for married, filing joint, $15,030. It's going to $16,000 and $32,000 under this legislation. But if you're over 65 and your income is less than $75,000 as an individual or $150,000 filing joint, if this bill should pass as drafted, you could add another $4,000 to your standard deduction. So that's not quite the same as exempting Social Security benefits from federal income taxes, which are taxed differently than your just normal income, wage income, and other income. Social Security benefits have a different tax structure. The full amount of the benefits is not actually subject to income taxes. I can't remember the exact brackets, but I think for an individual, anything less than $25,000, if your income's less than $25,000, your Social Security income is not taxable whatsoever. Under present law, between $25,000 and $34,000, 50% of your Social Security benefits would be subject to income taxes, and then over 34, I think it's 85%. So this would keep that structure the same. None of that would change. It's just that you would get to reduce your adjusted gross income by another $4,000 before you calculate all your income taxes. It turns out only about 40% of the people who receive Social Security income in this country are subject to taxation of their Social Security benefits. 60% don't. And so this really is not designed to help those people. This is just designed to help people over 65. That's the way you have to look at it. It's an additional $4,000 standard deduction added to your standard deduction just because you're over 65. And again, your income has to be less than 75 and $150K single, married, respectively. So a little different. Those are kind of the major provisions. There are also some changes to the SNAP program. We talked about that, but besides changing the ages where someone who receives food stamps has to work, that's going from 54 to 64. Besides that change, there are also penalties imposed on states if they essentially make mistakes in administering the program. That gets charged back to the state. So it's forcing the states to be more careful in their administration of the program and just have a little more skin in the game with respect to SNAP. Again, the major change in Medicaid, really two major changes, the work requirement, which does have some connection to Mississippi in that you guys remember last year we had a House and a Senate bill to expand Medicaid in the state. The House bill was going to seek a waiver, which is what was required at the time, and it would be required now to impose a work requirement on the able-bodied adult population. But if the administration, if the CMS, the federal agencies that oversees Medicaid, were to reject that waiver, as you recall, the House version of the bill would have still implemented the program. The Senate version would not have. Those are the main differences between the two. I saw somebody on the C-Spire text line that said, thank goodness for Delbert's wisdom concerning the expansion. The House tried to pass a short-sighted bill which would have been rendered useless. I don't know that that's an accurate characterization of it. The only difference was the bill in the Senate said, hey, look, if they don't approve this waiver for a work requirement, then we're not going to expand Medicaid. And the House version said, even if they don't approve it, we're going to seek it, but if they don't approve it, we're still going to move forward with it. That was the major difference. But that didn't even come up this year because there was a lot of discussion once the president was elected, President Trump, that the way Medicaid is financed at the state level, particularly the able-bodied adult population, was going to change. It sits at 90%. That was an incentive during the Obama administration years when the Affordable Care Act was passed to get states to expand Medicaid. It was thought that maybe that would be reduced. It turns out this bill does not do that, still stays at 90%. However, there's a caveat. There are some states that do allow illegals to participate in their Medicaid program. However, the federal government doesn't match it. The states pay for that on their own, but I promise they game it to get to the federal government where all taxpayers are paying. And so this bill says, hey, if you got illegals on your program, in your Medicaid program, even if you're paying for it, California, we're going to reduce the federal amount we send you for the expansion coverage group from 90 to 80%. So it's a penalty for states paying for Medicaid. Folks, we're out of time here today. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. We've enjoyed it here at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. Back with you on Tuesday. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.